So the X-Force single exhaust system designed for the 15 to 18 5-liter powered F-150 is currently one of the only available active exhaust systems that features a plug-and-play design. And in my opinion, I'm honestly pretty surprised at the price of this system given that fact. At around the $800 price point, this thing falls in the middle of the road in terms of cost, but I'm happy to say the quality and the features and function of this exhaust system certainly outpace the price. Now, as you heard from our exhaust sound clips, we do have two primary modes on here, and that's thanks to the provided key fobs in the kit. One mode is quiet and one mode is open. Now, the way the Varex system works is pretty cool. On the muffler itself, there's actually a butterfly valve controlled by a motor, and it actually functions wirelessly. There's a key fob, there's actually two provided in the kit. They have the little A and B options on there, and those are for open and closed. When the butterfly valve is closed, you're working with a pretty typical 3-chamber muffler setup. It definitely does a good job of suppressing sound. It does let the truck bark a little bit more than the factory exhaust system, especially if you delete the resonator, which is an option with this kit. So I'm going to give this system a soft 1, maybe 2 out of 5 on my loudness meter with the system closed. Now, as you also heard from our sound clips, with the butterfly valve open, it is basically a straight pipe setup, and it obviously gets a very healthy 5 out of 5 on my loudness meter. This is honestly one of the loudest exhausts currently available for the 5-liter F-150 when it's in its open configuration. So that's pretty cool. Now, what's also really cool is you can actually install an application on your smartphone, and you can even control this system wirelessly, again, from your phone, all the way from 0% to 100%. So you pretty much have full control over how loud or quiet you want the system to be. It's not just an open or closed setup, because let's face it, maybe you don't want a crazy quiet system and maybe you don't want that crazy loud one. You want something in between, so they definitely took that into consideration. Again, that just speaks to Varex's overall build quality and how well they executed this system. Other things that are really cool about the Varex system, it's pre-measured for your cabin bed length thanks to the provided tubing on the muffler and the new mid-pipe, and I'm happy to say overall build quality is pretty impressive. I've done a lot of catback installs on these trucks, and the way Varex builds this thing, it's pretty surprising, honestly. The welds are really nice, you got stack coins everywhere, and the way the pipes connect themselves, there's some pretty heavy-duty flanges on there, and even the hangers are pretty easy to install. Overall, they just really have a well-executed system. Again, pretty surprising for this price, considering most active exhaust systems fall well above the $1,000 mark. Now, the last thing I'm happy to talk about is how easily this system installs. It's pre-measured for your cabin bed length thanks to the design of the tubing on the muffler and the mid-pipe, so there's no cutting required. For that reason, I'm going to give the install a surprisingly simple 1 out of 3 wrenches on my difficulty meter. Even though it looks crazy and it sounds complex, I can promise you can definitely get this done at home with basic hand tools. All you really need are a couple of sockets and a hand ratchet and a little bit of elbow grease. To install your new catback, you will need a standard drive ratchet, a 13 and 14 millimeter socket, a 14, 16, and 17 millimeter wrench, as well as a 6 millimeter Allen key. Now, optional but helpful tools include an air gun, swivel socket, spray lubricant, an exhaust hanger puller tool, and a dead blow mallet. All right, so we can remove our factory catback in a couple of simple steps. The first step is grabbing a 13 millimeter socket and removing the 2 bolts that secure the factory catback to the wide pipe. Once you've done that, all you gotta do is pull the 2 factory rubber isolators out of there, and that's gonna drop the entire catback down. Now, you wanna be careful doing that. It is pretty heavy, but let the tailpipe rest on the axle. You can push the entire system back towards the rear bumper, enough to get this little guy here, the resonator, to drop down past this cross member. You can actually remove the entire system from the vehicle in one piece. All right, once you've got those 2 bolts removed, you can start tackling those exhaust hangers and those rubber isolators. There are 3 in total. There's 1 directly in front of the muffler right here, and there's 2 directly behind the muffler, 1 above the muffler and 1 over the tailpipe. It's pretty straightforward. All you want to do is spray those up with some WD-40 or a penetrating oil of some sort, let them soak for a minute and get them nice and lubed up, and then you can actually pop the exhaust hangers out of the rubber isolators. It's a little bit tricky, but it can be done by yourself. All you got to do is push the entire cap back towards the rear of the vehicle like I mentioned earlier, and all those exhaust hangers should pop free. All right, so we have our factory catback removed. We went ahead and we mocked up the new Varex system. That way you can see how easily everything goes together. And like I said, it is a pretty straightforward design. Again, it is a bolt-on application, and that's largely thanks to the way Varex tackled the muffler and the new mid-pipe. They pretty much just slip together. It's kind of like a slip fitting. All you gotta do is press the muffler into the mid-pipe as far as you need in order to size it up for your cab length, and then you throw on the new hangers that they provide in the kit, and that's pretty much it. Now, one thing to point out that's pretty cool, Varex does include this little fitting here. This is a step-down fitting if you want to retain your factory resonator. We're not going to bother with that. We want to see the full potential of the Varex system, so we're just going to go with the new mid-pipe. A couple other cool things to point out, it is 3 inches in diameter all the way through. That includes before the muffler itself, so you're going to get a little bit deeper tone out of this system, whether the butterfly valve is open or closed. And you can see on top of the muffler here, we have the motor itself. For the butterfly valve, it's tucked away in there nice and tight. Once you actually get everything installed, it's not hanging down to the side or the bottom, so you don't gotta worry about this thing taking any abuse from any debris that you might get underneath your truck. Now, the butterfly valve is operated again by those little key fobs, which is pretty cool. I'll show you guys how to wire that up shortly, but that is very straightforward. Again, this is a plug-and-play application. No custom wiring is required. And then moving out here to the business end, we got these really nice slash-cut tips, 4 inches in diameter. Everything is stainless throughout, so if you ever get any grease or grime on the back there, simply wipe them off, polish them up, and you should be good to go. But let's go ahead and continue with our install. We're gonna go ahead and tighten down our new mid-pipe on your truck. You are gonna be reusing those factory bolts, and you're gonna be using a couple of flat washers and nuts provided in the kit. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're gonna throw our new mid-pipe in place. We're gonna be reusing those 2 bolts that we loosened earlier, and you're also gonna need those 2 nuts and flat washers in the kit. You're gonna need an 18mm wrench to hold onto those guys as you tighten everything down. But at any rate, before you throw the mid-pipe in place, make sure you grab this little pressed metal gasket here, throw it on the end, that way you make sure you don't get any exhaust leaks. All right, now that our mid-pipe is in place, we can throw on our muffler. But before we do that, make sure you grab this large 3-inch band clamp provided in the kit and throw it on the mid-pipe. You're gonna secure the mid-pipe to the muffler using this clamp. Once you've done that, go ahead and slide the muffler in far enough that the new over-axle pipe lines up over the axle where the factory one did. All right, with our muffler in place and supported, we can throw on our tailpipe. The easiest way to go about this is to actually hang the tailpipe in the rubber isolators first, then you'll be free to tackle the flange and tightening that down. Easiest way to go about it is to throw this hanger in the rubber isolator near the muffler, then you can tackle this hanger and the rubber isolator near the spare tire. Again, once it's all hanging in place, you should generally be able to line everything up and you won't have to try and hold this thing in place while you're tightening everything down. All right, now that your tailpipe's hung up, you can go ahead and connect these 2 flanges. You want to make sure you have this gasket here to seal them, again, so you don't have any leaks. In order to tighten down these nuts and bolts, you're going to need a 16mm socket and a 14mm wrench. All right, once you got your tailpipe in place and tightened down, go ahead and throw on your exhaust tips. These have Allen head bolts here, so you're gonna need a 6mm Allen key. All right, once you're happy with where your exhaust tip is sitting, you can go ahead and tighten down all the hangers that you installed earlier. In order to tighten down the bolts and nuts on the hangers, you're gonna need a 13mm socket as well as a 13mm wrench. And you can also tighten down the band clamp securing the mid-pipe to the muffler. For that one, you're gonna need a 14mm deep socket. All right, so now that our catback is fully installed, you can actually turn the truck over and see how it sounds. Make sure you don't have any leaks or anything like that. And I just recommend taking it around the block or something of that nature. That way you can make sure nothing's clinking around in here, because once you're certain that everything's good to go, you can actually start wiring it up. Now, this is controlled by a 12-volt power outlet. You don't have to splice or custom wire anything. That's awesome. But you got to find a way to get this guy inside the cab, right? But before we do that, let's go ahead and plug in the wiring harness to the muffler itself. Simply grab the lead coming off of the butterfly motor there and plug in this end like so. All right, like I said, once you got that plugged in, you gotta find a way to get these guys inside the cab. Now, if you're mechanically inclined, obviously you could probably use something like a hole saw and just punch through the floor pan, but there's actually a crazy easy way to go about this, at least in the case of our 2018 F-150. Up front, there's a rubber grommet, and that actually feeds directly into the cab underneath the carpet. I'll show you guys how to access that from inside the truck, but basically you can go ahead and route all this wiring along the frame or somewhere underneath the rocker panels. I'd use zip ties to secure to the frame myself, and I'll show you guys where that rubber grommet is so we can feed these inside the cab. All right, now we put our truck back down on the ground here. You want to pop off this little plastic sill plate. You don't need any tools, just gently pry it up with your hands. Once that's free and out of the way, you should see your little connection here underneath the carpet. So you can see that little rubber grommet comes in down here underneath the carpet itself. Go ahead and pull all your excess cabling inside the cab. All right, once you got all that excess cabling inside the cab, you can snap your sill plate back in place. Go ahead and plug in the control module like so, and then all of this can actually live in the bottom of the center console here where your 12-volt outlet is located, so go ahead and plug that in now. All right, so once you got the wiring harness plugged in, go ahead and grab the key fob, click the buttons, and you should hear the butterfly valve opening and closing. And if you want to, you can install that smartphone app and you can control it wirelessly from there as well. But besides that, that actually wraps up the install. And it was, again, pretty surprisingly easy, right? That also wraps up my review of the Varex X-Force single exhaust system fitting your 15 to 18 5-liter powered F-150. I'm Travis, thanks for watching, and for all things F-150, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.